Welcome to Larry's Library. This week we're taking a look at Savage Avengers Omnibus. Of course, this is Marvel. This one has 776 pages. The retail list price on this is $100. Of course, you know you're a chump if you pay $100. So pick it up at a good discounter like InStockTrades.com or Cheap Graphic Novels or at least Amazon, and you won't pay the $100 cover price. Now, unfortunately, at the time of the shooting, it is completely out of stock at my preferred vendor, InStockTrades.com. But Cheap Graphic Novels does still show it listed for $59.99. So, pretty good price there too. As with most of the Marvel omnibuses that I have, the build quality on this is pretty good. Had no issues whatsoever reading it. Spine's in good shape. Pretty nice. The sample I have, at least. Now, the creators on this one, all of it is written by Gerry Duggan. Well, I should note here that this one also includes some Uncanny X-Men issues that are written by Claremont. But the bulk of the book, nearly all of it, is written by great writer Gerry Duggan, fan favorite. Don't need to talk about him much, but he did write this. Now, the art, of course, the art is where we run into a problem. Because this was a monthly Marvel comic book for quite a while, we've got a parade of artists of varying levels of greatness, and some of them do not mesh well together whatsoever. I mean, anytime you're going to throw 8-10 artists at a book, even if they're all pretty good artists, you're going to have a hard time. And that is the downfall of this book. Really the only downfall of note. It starts out fantastic with probably the most beautiful art I've ever seen by Mike Deodato Jr. begins this tome, this big book. Not really too big. It's less than 800 pages. It's ideal size for an Omni in my opinion, but that's an aside. Anyway, yeah, like I said, this starts out with some just absolutely gorgeous, breathtaking artwork by Mike Deodato Jr. It's so good. Starts out that good. It's really too bad that he couldn't have stayed on the book, or it's too bad that it's not sprinkled throughout, because that would have really made this, that would have made this 10 out of 10 for me. So spoiler, is not 10 out of 10. But yeah, man, he does the first few issues of this, and like I said, I've been a fan of Mike Deodato Jr. for a long time, but what he does in the first few issues of this book is absolutely stunning. Well, but we don't see any more Mike Deodato after those initial handful of issues. We get a parade of other artists. Now, Patrick Zircher, I think it's pronounced Zircher, could be wrong, but he does the majority of the remaining issues. But not all of them. You've got to fill in by Butch Guice. Butch Guice is always great, no problem there. You got, I think, one or two issues by Greg Smallwood. You've got an issue or so by Adam Gorham. You've got Ron Garney coming in for a little bit, and that's not bad either. Ron Garney's pretty good. You got one by Kim Jacinto, and you have a handful of issues by Kev Walker, and they're not bad either. So, it's a very much a mixed bag as far as the art. None of it is terrible, so that's the good news. None of it made me want to throw the book across the room. Not that I would ever do that. A book-obsessed guy like me could never do that. Even a book I didn't care for, I could never throw it across the room. I couldn't pour root beer on it either, but hey, that's someone else's bag. Well, it used to be. Now, as for the contents, this one collects Savage Avengers, issue 0 through issue 28. Basically the entire run by Gerry Duggan. I believe the series continued a little bit after that without Gerry, and that is not included here. It also includes annual number 1 from the same series, and it reprints Uncanny X-Men 190 and 191. And those issues, of course, are written by the great Chris Claremont with art by John Romita Jr. It also has some material from the Free Comic Book Day 2019 Avengers/Savage Avengers book. I assume that was one of those flip books. I don't have that, other than this reprint. So the plot on this, it's a really great one. Gerry Duggan is a good plot man, and he's got a real treat for you here. So the premise here is Conan is trapped in the modern the modern age. Now, how he got here and how he's trapped is one of my little quibbles with the book. I mean, this book is less than 800 pages. So I'm not sure why they couldn't have included at least some of the issues that brought him to this age. Or at least maybe reframed a nice page or two of a recap. You know, why not? I mean, you got room for it, you got the space. Why didn't they do that? I don't know. That's a Marvel question that I can't answer. But just suffice it to say, he's trapped here, you know, because they spend about 2 panels describing how that happened. Not very informative. But just go with it. That's what I did. Just went with it. Yeah. So yeah, he's trapped in the modern age, and he ends up having to employ a disparate team of heroes to help him fight the wizard Cullen Goth. Now, I pronounce that a different way every time I read it. It is spelled Kullangath. So sometimes I say Cullen Goth, sometimes I say Cullen Gath, sometimes I say Kulan. I don't know. I don't know how it's pronounced. And YouTube was of no help too. I tried that. I think I usually default to Cullen Goth. So let's just call him Goth throughout this when I refer to him. So yeah, so Conan ends up, it starts out, this whole story starts out in the Savage Land, at least the Conan parts of the story. And he ends up meeting a lot of the heroes from this age and some of the villains. Some he befriends, some he doesn't. And it is a real fun time. It really is. The highlights for me is Conan's relationship with Wolverine, the initial fight, and then they sort of bond. Conan introduces himself to Wolverine. He says, "I'm Conan of Cimmeria." And Wolverine says, "I am Wolverine. He says, "I am Logan of Pabst." So Conan goes with that, and he refers to him as Logan of Pabst from there on. Really great stuff. Conan's relationship with Frank Castle, the Punisher, is another highlight. They end up traveling together on foot through quite a bit of the Savage Land and some other areas, and it's great. It's perfect characterization. Gerry Duggan nailed that. I think he nailed the Punisher and how, if you can imagine, how Conan and the Punisher would relate to one another, and it is a joy. It is quite a joy. His relationship with Dr. Doom and how they get along is another highlight of this book. Fantastic stuff there. One quibble I had throughout the first 3/4 of this book was the title. Why is it called Savage Avengers? I thought it was just a marketing gimmick, and after finishing the book, I still think that it's about 97% marketing gimmick, because for me, this clearly should have been called the Savage Defenders, because this is a group that has they have no leader, right? Avengers always has a leader. They elect a chairman. They're not Avengers. This is more like Savage Defenders, because the Defenders were, if you know much about the Defenders, they were a non-team. They were a team of non-team. They were people who didn't join teams. They worked together as defenders, And the DNA for this was already in place, because Doctor Strange is part of this group throughout, and he was one of the original Defenders, So yeah, I think they should have called it Savage Defenders. But in the last few issues, as I got near the end of the book, they finally are referred to as Savage Avengers in the narration, and it sort of makes some sense, somewhat. I still think Savage Defenders would have been better, but it would not have been as marketable. So that's just my take there. Now, if I had to list some quibbles with it, I think that I've seen some interviews with Gerry Duggan where he does mention that he was a fan of the Bronze Age Conan, and that this should be considered a direct sequel to that those issues in that era. So that sounds great. But, I have a few minor quibbles with his characterization of Conan. For one thing, Conan, minor spoiler here, but Conan ends up having a symbiote attached to him. The venom creature is attached to him. And it's in his right arm specifically. And he uses it to, it saves his life initially. I don't want to give too much away, but it does. And it's bonded to him, and it can make a sword or an axe or whatever melee weapon he wants out of its black stuff. I'm not a big Venom Carnage fan, so there may be more facets to this that are over my head. not a huge fan of that character, but I know a lot of people are. At any rate, I think that Conan accepts the symbiote way too fast. And I think I'm qualified as a Conan expert to answer that, to talk about this, because I've read all the original Robert E. Howard stuff. I've read much of the stuff after Robert E. Howard in prose. And of course, I've read nearly the entire Marvel run of Conan, the original run, and some of the newer stuff even, as well as the Dark Horse stuff. So yeah, I know a lot about Conan and that world, and especially that character. And here's how Conan would have reacted to this symbiote. He would have been like, demon! And he would have thought that was a demon, that was a monster, and he would have done everything short, and maybe even including cutting off that arm to get rid of it. Now, you couldn't have had the story go on without this, I mean, with him cutting his right arm off. I mean, that would have been a disaster, obviously. So, you know, how I would have handled it, had I been the writer, no one asked me, but if I would have been the writer, I would have had Conan react just like that stinks of sorcery, and it's a demon, and he wants it out of him. And I think I would have had Doctor Strange, maybe Dr. Voodoo, and some of the other characters involved here, and there's a lot, talk him down, keep him from butchering himself, and learning to live with this while he has this symbiote. But yeah, I thought that they really wrapped that up really quick, and his acceptance of that thing was way too fast. I think he explains, Duggan explains it away by Conan thinking that Crom is working through this creature to help him, which I also think is a mischaracterization, because Crom, in the Hyperborean Age, in the world of Robert E. Howard and Conan, Crom sits on his mountain and he don't give two shits about what's going on below. He might take a passing interest and watch, but he never gets directly involved. And the followers of Crom don't expect him to either. So I think this whole explanation is pretty shaky for me. But you know what? I'm a Conan geek, so it may not apply to most people, obviously. But it is a minor quibble. So yeah, I don't think the Conan I know would have accepted that so quickly and just went with it like he did in this story. Also, Conan, many times throughout, when talking about a bow or any sort of distance weapon, gun, rifle, whatever, but even a bow, which he is quite familiar with bows, he calls them a coward's weapon. Now, I think that the young Conan, right out of the gate, early on in the Conan mythology, would have made a statement like that, for sure. I'm sure he has. I can remember that. But he would not go on to do that. As he matured, and especially as he got older, middle age, and on up to, when he became king, he recognized the bow and distance weapons for what they were and how important they could be. So, for him to just keep on with that coward's weapon, I think once was enough for me, and did it 2 or 3 more times. I started like, come on, Conan would not continue with that. But again, minor quibble with characterization. But overall, this is a rollicking good time. It really is. And it has a great ending. And I love a great ending. But yeah, the Goth, the evil wizard Goth, Gerry Duggan does some things with him here that has never been done, and he does it really well. He pulls in the lore from the Elder Gods is involved here. Oh yeah, and the cast is awesome. You got Elektra, you've got the Punisher I mentioned, you got Wolverine, Kang the Conqueror gets involved at one point, not to give too many spoilers away. Doctor Strange is throughout this, as he should be, with there being extra dimensional demonic issues going on and an evil wizard to battle that could end the entire universe, or certainly our universe. So yeah, this is good stuff. It would have been great stuff had we had more consistent art, and it would have been a downright masterpiece had Mike Deodato Jr. stayed with it throughout. Wow, to think of what could have been there. But we didn't get that. So overall, I had a good time with this. I liked it. I never stopped reading it until I was done. Over a week or so that I read it. But I would give this 8 out of 10 for me. couple of minor character problems, I think, and the army of artists problem that plagues a lot of these books reduces it to an 8 for me. But it's a solid 8 out of 10. If you have an interest at all in Conan, then you should definitely pick it up. And that's all I got this time. Hope you guys enjoyed seeing the scans. And subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the bell to notify yourself. And I will see you next time.